I just emailed Seth Godin and basically, threw down the gauntlet. And then I was like, well, what have I got to lose? He's already said no twice. What if he says no a third time? Big deal, Anyway, half an hour later, he just said, yes, I'm in.
Welcome to WP-Tonic, episode 57. Just a quick reminder, episode 57 was made with YouTube and is on iTunes. But we also made a sister episode to this show, and that's episode 116 on Timelines of Success. You'll find that at timelinesofsuccess.com. If you go into iTunes, just type in Timelines and you'll find the podcast. So, hey, we're having fun. And remember that you can find the show on YouTube by just pushing on the artwork if you have an iPhone, and up will come a link. Press the link and you can watch it unedited on YouTube, or go on over to WP-Tonic.com. Well, without further ado, let's get right into this episode with Troy Dean. So, Jonathan, dig into him. Let's find out all those tricks about WordPress.
Oh, it's great to have you on the show, Troy. You've been a great ambassador for the WordPress community. I always enjoy listening to your podcast. I have a long walk in the morning. I'm trying to get fit for the past 6 months, and I always listen to your podcast, Troy, and it's just a great pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you very much. You and the other 13 people that tune in, I'm very appreciative.
So to start off with, obviously you got exciting news. You've probably been really busy, so that's one of the reasons we also appreciate you finding the time to come on the show. You've relaunched WP Elevation. Tell us more, Troy. Why have you changed the format, the look of the website, and what exciting things are you planning to offer the people that are going to join it?
So that's a true story. We did launch. We launched 4 hours and 16 minutes ago, actually, which was 6 o'clock in the morning my time. And so the main reason that we relaunched is because I was logging. So we've been going for just over 2 years now. I was logging into the members website to find resources and find templates, and because it's basically like a storage unit for my own consulting business, right? And I was logging in and I was just having a horrible experience in our own members website. I was like, you know what? This is just terrible. I can't find what I'm looking for. And that means that the other members aren't having a good experience either. I kind of flagged it with our team that we need to rebuild the members website and make the navigation better and just make it more well organized so that people can access what they need when they need it. And then I started digging into some of our analytics. And what I realized is that our success stories, our real true ambassadors of the product, are the people that have been through the entire training from start to finish. Where we lose people, and I think where people don't benefit from the program, is when they come in, they do 3 or 4 lessons, and then they bail. So I said, okay, what if we now, instead of having it in evergreen mode where you can just join whenever you want and it's kind of like a vending machine, you can just go in and take, whatever pieces you want. What if we do it like a structured course? So we put people through one course, one module per week, and we actually kind of gently force them to go through the training in order, because my feeling is that will get them a better result, which in turn gets us a better result because we get better word of mouth and goodwill from the community. So that's the big change that we've made. Is we that structurally, that's what we did. From a content point of view, we partnered with one of our members who's been around for a few months, who actually lives here in Melbourne and sometimes works out of the same building. We got him into the office here for a month, and he pulled apart our entire course and helped us rebuild it. He said, well, that doesn't work and that doesn't work and that's baloney and that does work, but you need to fix that and you need to send some more emails here and you need to fix that template. And so he helped us rebuild the course from the ground up. And that's what we've launched today.
Well, it sounds great. I'll give you a quick bit of background about me. That I got initially into web design as a hobby, and then I joined an online course run by a well-known web developer in the UK that does a lot of training called Ben Hunt. Have you heard of him?
I know Ben. Yeah, I know Ben very well. Yeah.
He's a great guy, and that's how I learned the basics of web design and development, and it was a secondary business for me. And I got into it in the late 90s, and for about a 2-year period, I made more money out of that than my main business. It was very lucrative, web design. It's not so lucrative maybe now, but I think it's just changed a lot. So what do you think some of the key things, if WordPress consultant is a big, broad umbrella, isn't it? It's a bit like WordPress developer. I don't even know what the term means anymore, WordPress developer. So it's in the eye of the beholder in some ways, isn't it? So what are some of the key things you've learnt by the people that's gone through your course previously? What are some of the key things that somebody trying to build a career in the industry needs to avoid, and some of the things that they need to do for success? I know that's a very broad question, but I thought you could probably answer it.
Sure, excuse me. So just let me draw this distinction. In my mind, the way I see it is a WordPress developer is someone who spends time in code writing PHP and HTML and CSS to make WordPress do something that they've been told it needs to do. And a WordPress developer might also code up a theme or build some custom functionality or even a plugin. A WordPress consultant, as far as I'm concerned, is someone who sits between the client and the technical team or the creative team. So a WordPress consultant is someone who says to the client, what business are you in? What are you trying to achieve? Why do you think you need a website? What problems are you trying to solve? What goals are you trying to kick? And then knowing what's possible and what can be done with WordPress and why WordPress is a good solution, which we can talk more about, then take that brief, distill it down into something that's actionable and put together a project plan, and then brief a technical team, a developer, designer, and get the job done, and then deliver it back to the client and make sure that the client's getting what they've purchased. Now, I actually think that the most valuable seat in the whole WordPress ecosystem is that seat, the ability to communicate, facilitate the conversation between the client and the developer. And it's not that developers aren't great at talking with clients, although, and I come from a development background, so I think I'm allowed to say this, that not all developers are great at talking to clients. But what's more important than that is that most clients are terrible at communicating with developers.
Jonathan, we just had that discussion on our blab. We were just blabbing about that concept. I see the same thing.
Yeah. All right, Bill.
No, Jonathan, we had that discussion, is that the client needs that bridge. How many clients have you seen you have been taken advantage of? They don't control their domain. They lose their website. They spend ungodly amount of money on different folks and don't have anything.
Well, it's a bit of both ways, isn't it?
No, Jonathan, we talked about it. I was talking to Tony.
Well, I think it goes both ways, doesn't it, Troy? I've been abused by some clients, and I've always tried to treat my clients fairly. But I don't. One thing I put you, Troy, I think unless you're dealing with you're going up higher in the food chain a lot. Do you feel that small and medium clients, obviously they want to get the best value for their dollars as possible? Their main objective is to squeeze as much value. Do you
Jonathan, I just asked a question, okay?
Yeah.
I want Troy, because you and I talked about that.
Yeah.
The issue of, and Jonathan's right too, that a client can abuse a developer, and a bad developer who doesn't know how to monetize can't stay in business. I think you hit a really valuable entity as it evolves, as the complexities evolve.
Well, go on then, Troy. Answer the question.
Sorry.
What is the question exactly?
The question was, what do you see? Thanks. We went sideways. Sorry about that. But we were talking about the same thing. What do you see? What are your best? What are the best points with your? How do you evolve and protect both the client and the developer? And the question I see, the main question I just asked you at the end is, have you found the same thing that I found, that many clients don't control their domain name? They spend a lot of money on a lot of different developers, and they lose a lot, and they have nothing to show for it because they can't communicate between the developer. So that's the question. Have you seen that same thing?
Sure. Yes, I have. And the thing is that, I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday who's in the SEO space, right? And you reckon web developers have got a bad name. Try being an SEO. I mean, those guys are just pushing it uphill from the minute they start a conversation with the client, because the client basically treats SEO people like real estate agents or used car salesmen. And that's because the SEO industry have allowed themselves to go down that road and use all sort of black hat spammy techniques over the years, and now they have to dig themselves out of that hole. So here's a radical idea, right? If a client is trying to squeeze value and take advantage out of a web developer and trying to squeeze value, and that's the whole conversation they're having, it's the web developer's fault for allowing that conversation to happen. So I was at a WordPress meetup recently, and the big conversation was all about scope creep. Clients, everyone's whinging about clients and their scope creep, blah, 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 blah. And I said, if you're not happy, if your clients are giving you grief with scope creep, it's your fault. It's not your client's fault. It's your fault, because you haven't set their expectations from the start and you haven't clearly outlined the product that they're buying. So the big mistake that I see WordPress, or any developer really, any freelancer really, the big problem that I see freelancers have is that they're so hungry for the work, they're so afraid of missing out on their next meal that you tend to cannibalize your own integrity just to keep the customer happy. And you always think that rule number one, the customer's right, and rule number two, if in doubt, refer to rule number one. Well, my take on it is this. Rule number one, the customer is not right because the customer doesn't know what they're talking about. That's why they're hiring you as a consultant, right? So rule number one is the customer actually wants you to be the expert. The customer already thinks that you are the expert. So rule number two is be the expert that the customer wants you to be. Control the process, control the conversation, have systems and processes in place. Just like when you walk into a doctor's surgery, you are in a system from the minute you walk in. You go to reception, you tell them your name, you sit down, you wait, the doctor's late, you spend 15 minutes, you pay the bill before you leave the building. That is not an accident. That is designed that way. And we as creative freelancers need to make sure our processes and our systems are watertight like that, and we need to put our clients through those processes, because when you are in a process like that, you feel like you're in safe hands. You feel like this person knows what they're doing, I trust them. Where if you don't have systems and processes like that, you think, well, this person doesn't know what they're doing, so you just start owning the process and you start micromanaging, and that's when scope creep happens, and that's when your profitability goes out the window.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic, Troy. But I also feel that's one of the reasons why they should join your course, isn't it? Because on reflection, keeping the control of the process and avoiding all the things you've just said took me a lot. And I was in business in retailing, and also been doing web design as a kind of hobby. But running either a freelancer or a small agency is difficult, and it's a bit of a strange animal, and joining a course like the one you're running could save you a lot of mistakes, learning the hard way. If you can learn from other people's mistakes, it's a much cheaper solution, isn't it?
Well, totally. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday who's a graphic designer, and he's got his own agency now. He employs 3 or 4 staff. But this is a new thing for him. He's had his own business for maybe 2 or 3 years, and we're actually walking to work together. And I said to him, how did you learn? Like, obviously you went and studied graphic design at university, college. How did you learn how to run a business as a creative agency? So, I spent 10 years working for agencies, and I saw how they did it, and I saw all the mistakes they made, and I learned in that 10-year on-the-job training with an agency. So that's one way you can do it. You can go work for an agency for 10 years and learn how not to run an agency, and learn how to do it and learn all the mistakes, and then go and set up your own agency. The other way to do it, if you want to shorten your learning curve, is to do something like what we're offering, or Ben Hunt or those guys. Study and learn from people who have been there and done it, and that's why we offer our course, because we've been there and done it. We've made all the mistakes, and my hope is that I can save other people from making the same mistakes.
So, how long is the course?
So it's a 6-week course. many. I mean, there's about 55 lessons in the course. I'm not exactly sure how long it would take you to go through the course, but it's probably, each lesson's probably, they're bite-sized chunks, sort of 5 to 10 minutes each, with some actionable downloads and some quizzes to make sure it kind of sinks in. And the hope is that at the end of that 6 weeks, you've got some structure and systems and processes in the business so that the next time somebody pops their hand up and says, I'm interested in a website, you know exactly what to say and what not to say and what to do so that you can have that meaningful conversation right from the start, rather than just become a grease monkey for hire and have the client bark orders at you, which is where we all start. I mean, that's where I started as well. And 8 years ago, and that's where, I just think you've got to quickly get out of that mindset. Otherwise, you are just a technical dude for hire, and the client hires you and then just tells you. I remember one of the first websites I built. It doesn't exist anymore, thank God, because it was just horrible. But the client was actually, I built this website on WordPress, and the client came back to me and she basically designed it in Microsoft Word. She drew a table in Microsoft Word. It had a purple background and green text, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you've ever seen a website with green text on a purple background, but you can't read it.
Troy, that's how I do all my websites, Troy.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And the client said, but I'm paying you, this is what I want. I said, okay. And so I did it because I didn't know any different, right? The client was paying the bill. Whereas now I would gleefully tell that client to go and hire someone on Odesk to do their job because, that's where that client belongs. Go and find someone on Odesk to design your green text on your purple website. And when no one's converting, come back and see me and I'll fix it for you. So, but that's where we all start. And you can, if that's where you want to stay, great. If you want to, stay as a freelancer and just have people, order things off the menu and you just, charge your time for money, then that's fabulous. But if you've got any kind of other aspirations and you want to, leverage your time for money or build something a bit more meaningful or make something a bit more profitable, then that's where I think you need to kind of grow up into that consulting seat.
Yeah, you obviously can put me right, but you came, I think, listening to your podcast, you came from the music voice industry, and then you got into development, and a lot of people in that background, there seems to be a lot of people that have come from that background, doesn't there?
We've got a lot of creatives in WP Elevation. We've got a lot of musicians, actually. We could probably put together a mini jazz orchestra in WP Elevation members alone. So there's lots of creative people. And I think what happens is creative people love the web because it's creative, but also there's an instant gratification with developing. This is what I learned. One of the great things about being a songwriter is you can sit down in the afternoon and write a song, and you can literally go and play it that night at the pub and have people clap. Right? Well, that's about as instant gratification as you can get as an artist. But if you start cutting code and refreshing the browser, well, nothing beats that. That's like a microwave dinner. You don't even have to wait 2 minutes. You put in a curly brace and wow, look at the browser changes. I mean, that's just as instant gratification as you can get. And I think that's what appeals to a lot of creative people, that they can instantly see the fruits of their labor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, I'm going to get on to some of your guests because I think you've had some fantastic interviews recently. You've been in top form, but just to finish this part of the interview, so I think a lot of freelancers or people that's trying to get a real business, it's lead generation. It's finding the right client, getting enough of the right clients so they can build a portfolio, they can move their business on. And initially it's always a struggle. Have you got any kind of tips or insights that you could quickly give around getting the right clients, building that portfolio, moving your business on?
Sure. Here's something that no one talks about except Seth Godin. He talks about it. He calls it the dip. But here's something that no one really likes to talk about is taking the wrong client is actually going to hurt your business more than doing nothing. So when I started out, I very quickly realised that doing a website for $1,200 was not profitable in where I live on the planet and the kind of lifestyle that I have, which is not extravagant, by the way. But where I live on the planet, building a website for $1,200 is not sustainable, right? Australia is an extremely expensive country to live in, And if you spend, any more than a week on a $1,200 website, you're not going to make any money. You're not going to survive. So I very quickly learned we have to go to the $5,000 mark very quickly. And then we went to the 10, 15, 20 grand mark. But I've firmly said to my business partner, we're not doing anything under $5,000 anymore. That's it, done, right? Just say no to anything that comes in the door that's under $5,000. He said, well, how are we going to pay the bills? I said, well, you're a designer. Go and do some freelance design work for your old design clients. I play music and I'm a voiceover artist, so I'll always eat. I'm not worried about that at all, man. I will always eat. I'll go and do voiceovers. I'll play gigs in pubs if I have to earn a couple of $100. I'll always eat. But if we take these $1,200 or $2,000 or $3,000 jobs on, it's actually going to it's like putting the handbrake on the business, right? The only way we're going to get to the $5,000, $10,000 clients is to put our prices up now and be prepared to suck it up until we get those clients in the door. So I started making videos. I started making a series of videos called 60-Second Lesson, where I taught one thing about online marketing in 60 seconds. And I made 16 videos in one afternoon. And I put them out once a week. So that was 4 months worth of content in one afternoon. And we never had to worry about clients again after that. Those videos got shared around online. People sent them off to their friends. People emailed us and said, love the videos. I've referred you to someone else. And work came. And then more work came. And then more work came.
You put them up on YouTube?
Yeah, we put them on YouTube and we put them on Vimeo. We put them on YouTube for sharing. And then we put them on Vimeo and used the Vimeo player on our website because it was a bit sexier than the YouTube video.
It looks really good. I've seen some of your work. It's beautiful.
And thank you. And in the meantime, I went and played gigs in pubs and my business partner designed some annual reports for his old design clients, right? And we sat around looking at each other, twiddling our thumbs some days going, what the hell are we doing? But we just knew that if we started work on a $2,000 website, the quality of work that we were wanting to produce, it was going to actually cost us so much time to produce that $2,000 website that we couldn't then go and position ourselves as the trusted source of credible information to the clients that we actually wanted to attract, right? So what I'm saying is to get through the dip, like Seth Godin said when I interviewed him recently, you can live on 2-minute noodles for 8 years while you're promoting your thing, which in his case was a book. You can find a way to pay the rent, yeah? Because if you start at the bottom end of town, you're going to spend your whole life trying to walk uphill to the Paris end of town, right? Well, here's an idea. Why not just start at the Paris end of town and find a way to pay the bills until it pays off? And the reason I think that's a viable strategy is because it's absolutely mind-numbingly terrifying and no one's prepared to do it. So it's a great opportunity because that end of the market is underserved. I'm not talking about enterprise clients. I'm talking about the medium-sized business, right? Not mum and pup shops. Mum and pup shops are not going to sustain you. If you are wanting to build a profitable, successful business as a WordPress consultant, mum and pup shops are not going to sustain you unless you can figure out a way to churn them out like a factory, right? They're not going to, they're just not sustainable. The medium-sized business are completely underserved by consultants because nobody knows how to talk to them. Everyone's scared of them. Enterprise agencies don't want to know about them because they're not big enough, and freelancers don't want to know about them because they terrify them. Right, so
that's really interesting.
You've got a product. You got the product and the design side, right? The consulting and the design, and the product that you sell to teach. Jonathan, let me ask a quick question go back on the product, and I'll let you guys finish up. On your product, how do you market that product? What are you trying to see? I'm trying to work on a similar product, but that knowledge that people understand WordPress. My theory is once they understand WordPress, then they'll feel comfortable hiring the designers, the coders, and all the different people they need to hire. So what's your product? How do you market that product, and how does it compare? Where do you make more money, on the digital side or over on the development side?
I'm not really sure. So I'm not sure.
You got two products. You've got your course for 6 weeks that teaches how to do WordPress, right? How far do you take them?
Well, so we don't teach anything technical in that course. So we don't teach how to use WordPress. We don't teach how to code or how to design. Right? We teach WordPress consultants how to run their business.
Okay,
we teach WordPress consultants how to meet with clients, how to take a client brief, how to write proposals. We teach a little bit around development frameworks and development workflows, prototyping, wireframing, design phase. But we don't teach HTML, PHP, CSS, or actual WordPress code. There's plenty of people that do a really good job of that.
So you monetize that. You've got your design side, and then you've got your speaking.
Yep.
3 ways to monetize.
That's right. Yep.
I think.
And so the clients. Go on, Jonathan.
Sorry, I just think it's great what you're offering, because I actually think what you're offering is there isn't a lot of resources from a trust. I trust you, Dean, and you've got a very strong reputation, and I just don't think on that business side there is a lot of trusted resources, is there? So I think you offer a great thing. I just want to quickly move on, because we've got about 8-10 minutes. I just want to move on to your recent interviews, because I think you've been on fire, it takes a bit of luck, but you've had some excellent, my mind's gone, the dip,
Seth Godin. Yep.
Sometimes when you get a really top guest like that, it doesn't always work out to be a great interview, does it? But that actually was. And I think, did you choose the format? Because it was quite an unusual format. Did you choose that format? Because it really worked, didn't it?
Yeah, I did. And that's kind of a format that I'm going to be doing more of in the future. A couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, I'm kind of fatigued. I'm fatigued just interviewing people, because I've been doing it for so long, and I've heard so many interview format podcasts that I'm starting to kind of get a little bit bored asking people the same questions. Now, here's the thing. The reason that our format's been so consistent over the last 95 episodes is because for me, the only way to smash out a great podcast every week is to have it systemized and have it processed, right? So I have pretty much the same questions I ask every guest every week. And we go off on tangents, but I always stick to basically the same script. And I'm kind of bored with that script now. So I want to do something a little more interesting. Otherwise, I'm not going to do it, right? Because I don't want to do it half-assed. I actually want to give it my all for the audience. Otherwise, there's no point. The other reason that I did that with Seth is because I had heard along the grapevine that Seth Godin, and this might be completely wrong, but I'd heard along the grapevine that he doesn't like podcasters building their profile using other talent, right? So
terrible. Oh, shocking.
Yeah,
terrible.
Yeah. So, so
he would never do that, would he? He would never do that, would he?
I heard him on The Growth Show by HubSpot, and which is a great podcast. And I emailed him, and I've emailed him a couple of times over the years, so I kind of figured that he, probably knew who I was. And I emailed him and said, look, thank you for everything you do, because, you just continue to inspire us all. And yes, I heard you on the Growth Show podcast and it was fantastic. Yes, I have my own podcast. Yes, I just recently interviewed Guy Kawasaki. And yes, I'm dropping names to impress you. No, I don't want to interview you on my podcast. I want to challenge you to come on my podcast and help one of our mastermind members with some very specific issues that she's having in her business. And half an hour later, and I said, are you in? ? And I sent that email and I thought, that was a bit confident. That was a bit cocky. I just emailed Seth Godin and basically, threw down the gauntlet. And then I was like, well, what have I got to lose? He's already said no twice. What if he says no a third time? Big deal. Anyway, half an hour later, he just said, yes, I'm in. As long as it's not like a Shark Tank kind of competition thing, then I'm in. And I said, great. And then it happened. So, I think the thing about reaching out to influencers is that you can't do it cookie cutter style. You have to really do your research and you have to know what makes that person tick. And in terms of the format, the other reason I wanted to do it is because I've listened to so many podcasts over the years where I've had moments and I've thought, I reckon that person's embellishing or exaggerating what they're talking about. I don't reckon that person knows as much about this particular topic as they're pretending, and I think they're just on a podcast and they're kind of, puffing their own chest up. And if I'm going to get people on a podcast in the future, I'm not interested in how much you know. I'm interested in actually rolling our sleeves up and doing some work together. Yeah. So if that's of interest, then great. I'm happy to have those conversations. But if it's just a pissing contest, then I'm kind of done with that. Like I've been listening to podcasts for too long, and it's been very inspiring for me, and it's really helped me on my journey. But I've evolved and I've kind of moved on from that. So,
obviously there's two things. The other guest that I thought lately that was quite amazing, but I think she's a great lady, is the interview with Rebecca Gills. And not only is she technically a very smart lady, a great business owner and a part of the WordPress community, but she was very, very honest with you, and you dealt with some. I thought it was one of your best interviews, actually, personally. It affected me quite deeply, and it'd be great to get her back on the show at some time. So what was your feeling as the interview was going? Because I think you covered some quite powerful issues in that interview. And
it was all pretty... I mean, and I think we're chatting off camera. It was all pretty organic, really. I mean, Rebecca, dropped a couple of bombs on me that I wasn't aware of. I mean, the fact that she was a ward of the state and went and worked at Macca's and got her training at McDonald's, and then kind of ended up, where she is now. And it's a really interesting journey. And I wasn't aware of that. I've met Rebecca at WordCamp Chicago, but I wasn't aware of the kind of detail of her history. So when she said that, my mind straight away went to, well, hang on a second. My job is to represent the audience on the podcast. So if I'd just heard that on a podcast, I would want to know more. As the listener, I would want to know more about that, and I would want to know how that has affected her trajectory and her journey. So that's why I asked her those questions and dug a little bit deeper. But I don't think you can kind of have that conversation and then not scratch the surface. You can't just scratch the surface. I don't think you can do that without going deep. Otherwise, it's just a bit weird. So, but the other thing is that, as I said, I do have kind of a script. Well, I have had a script for that format of the podcast. But when people, you have to just be paying attention and you have to be listening. And when people say things, you need to be prepared to, just put yourself aside, put your own ego. Like, I don't care how I look or how I sound on the podcast, because it's not about me. It's about the listener connecting with the guest. I'm just a conduit for the conversation. That's my job, Yeah,
it was great, I think. Just two questions to finish off.
Sure.
Of all the guests that you interviewed, is there any one that comes to mind that was the most either enjoyable, most surprising? Is there anyone that really kind of still sticks in your mind of all the interviews you've done?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure I can answer that question. I love them all.
Yeah, it is difficult.
It is. It's very difficult. I mean, I've learned the good thing about podcasting is I have learned so much. Joe Polizzi from the Content Marketing Institute was extremely generous when he was on the podcast. I mean, he invited me up to their Content Marketing World Conference, which was a couple of weeks after the podcast, on a media pass. So I went up there and got to go to that conference as a podcaster and interviewed a whole bunch of people up there and have made some amazing connections. It's been great for my own personal network running a podcast. Timbo Reed from Small Business Big Marketing, he's a fellow Melburnian. David Jennings is another Melburnian here. I love the locals, but and we shot an episode live. We actually shot an episode in front of a live audience once with Elliot Condon from Advanced Custom Fields. That was a real highlight as well. So it's been.
I remember that interview. It was pretty good, wasn't it?
It's been great. I've absolutely loved it, and I will continue to podcast in the future. I'm just not sure what the WP Elevation podcast looks like 3 months from now, because it will be a different form.
Yeah. I just want to tell you, obviously, one of our first guests who agreed was Matt from the Matt Report. And I always will owe Matt a favour, because we had a pretty rough website and we were new, I was pretty new to it, and he just agreed to come on. And Kim Dole encouraged me into podcasting, and she could be a bit of a spitfire when she wants to, but she has got a heart of gold. But she can be a handful, but she knows what she wants and she knows how to get it.
You're in good hands with Matt Medeiros and Kim Doyle. I've had both of them on the podcast, and they're great. They're great people.
But my favourite guest, and he's become a friend, and he is an amazing person. And I don't know if he's been on your show. If he hasn't, I would highly recommend him. Is Morten Hendrickson from lynda.com.
Yes, right.
We had him on, and we did a 3-hour interview. We had to break it up into 2 bits, and he was on our 50th show for 2 hours. and it's just he's just a fantastic guy, and he's so knowledgeable about coding and WordPress, and he's just a fantastic human being and so knowledgeable. So I love all my guests, but I would say he's the one that really sticks.
Cool. I'll have to reach out and connect with him for sure.
Oh, he's just an amazing interviewer. And he's a bit like Rebecca. You'll get honesty from him. He'll give you what he really believes, and he'll just tell you what he thinks in a very coherent, logical way. And I think that's what you got from Rebecca. So I'm just going to finish, what question have I missed out in this interview, Troy? What was the question that you would like me to ask you? As the great podcaster yourself, what did I miss out on, Troy?
Well, I don't know. I'm always curious as to why people do what they do. You know, I'm always curious. Human behaviour and human motivation has been something that's fascinated me ever since I can remember, really. Not that I want you to ask me why I do what I do, but if there's any question that I'm always trying to uncover why people do what they do.
Oh, Troy, I think we've just finished on a high point, because I think this is the key factor that took me a long time to learn. It's basically when you're talking initially with a client, you really, really you should keep your bloody mouth shut, and you need to open your ears, and you really, really need to understand why they want a website, why they're hiring you, what is the thing or things that they really want from this process. Because if you don't give them, you don't understand the client and where they're coming from, and they're all a bit different, aren't they? I think you're going to get into some deep trouble, and I have with some of them. So would you agree with that? Actually, and one of the key, and maybe a lot of developers don't learn this, is you've got to really understand the client.
I was talking to a client recently, and after much conversation, I discovered that the reason that they wanted a new website is because they wanted to generate a certain amount of new business. They had a bricks and mortar shop, an actual real physical shop that customers walk into, and they knew what an average customer was worth to them, and they knew what they were spending on AdWords a month, and they knew that it wasn't paying off. And they basically said, we could turn the AdWords off and save that money for a few months and go back to Europe.
Jonathan, real fast, listen to episode 57. If we're going to have a special, there's going to be a blab. Hopefully it comes out and we put it up behind 57 into 58 so folks can discover blab. I think, as Jonathan knows, I think this is going to be a game changer, blab. So thank you. You're really good, Troy. Jonathan, good. Take care. See you later.